Hello everyone, welcome to Think Lowestoft's first funding workshop of hopefully money for creatives in Lowestoft. Thanks so much for joining us. With us online we have Kate Ellis from East Suffolk Council's Regen team and Lisa Elmer, who is the Relationship Manager for Children, Young People and Learning with the Arts Council South East, who has been recovering from flu, unfortunately, which is why we decided to move this online so that she didn't have to travel or infect anybody, basically. Hopefully Lisa will be able to come back in person again next year, but we'll keep you posted on that. If you do have any questions, please just put them in the Q&A box, which is in the bottom right-hand side on the black bar. If you just hover your mouse over that, you can see a Q&A box. Put any questions in there for Lisa, and we will ask her those at the end. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And many thanks, Lisa, for being with us. And I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to try and share my screen and then we'll get started. Is that work? Kate or Joe, is that working?
It is indeed, yes.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, let me just around here. Okay, so this presentation should take about 40 minutes to an hour, I think. What I will say just to start is this is the first time I've given this presentation on the new National Lottery Project grant. So please bear with me if I stumble over myself a little bit at times. As Joe said, my name's Lisa. I'm a Relationship Manager at Arts Council England. My job title is Relationship Manager Children, Young People and Learning, as it says on the screen, but it's quite a broad role, and I also hold a role where I have a relationship with different organisations in Suffolk and a bit of an overview for projects within Suffolk as well. So this presentation is primarily about National Lottery Project grants, or project grants for short, and I'll probably refer to it as project grants throughout rather than its full name. We will look at what it funds, how you apply, what happens to your application during the process. And this presentation has the more simple PowerPoint slides with images and text, but I'll also try to make sure that I cover everything on the slides. If they're not too clear, but they shouldn't be too wordy. I gave a presentation to a forum the other week and some of the slides were very small, so I've tried to avoid that with these ones. Before we go into the detail, one of the things I want to say is that we get more good applications for project grants than we can afford to fund. So along with this presentation that I'll give you today, there's other resources on our website, including the how to apply guidance, which all applicants should read, and then probably read again if I'm honest. And then also there's information sheets that can help make your project as strong as it can be. Okay, so before you apply for project grants, we want to make this fund accessible to everyone. So before we get into the details of the programme, I want to touch on some of the ways we can help provide support for people that may have barriers to accessing funding. So if you were to find it difficult to get advice or undertake the application process, we can help you. For example, we can provide our guidance in other formats such as BSL, Braille, audio, easy read or large print, or we can even pay for a support worker to help people apply. And you can get in touch with our customer services team on our website at artscouncil.org.uk/contact if you need that support to supply. And there's also a dedicated access support information sheet on our website, which explains the types of support that we can offer in more detail. If you've got a query about access support, but you prefer not to email or phone, we have now introduced a live chat on our website, and you can click the icon on any of our web pages and that will directly take you to a member of our customer services team, and that's available during office hours. Just going to keep clicking here because okay, So this presentation will cover who we are, the National Lottery Projects Grant Scheme, project grants and our strategy, then how much you can apply for. We'll look at the application form, how to apply using Grantium, how we make decisions, and how to contact us. Okay, so who are we? Arts Council England are the National Development Agency for Creativity and Culture. We distribute funding to individuals, arts organisations, libraries and museums. And we want to work to grow skills, knowledge and networks to help create opportunities for creativity and culture across the country. We want to grow the skills and knowledge across the country so that by 2030, England will be a country in which the creativity of each of us is valued and given the chance to flourish. A country where every one of us has access to a remarkable range of high quality cultural experiences. And that's embedded within our strategy for the next 10 years. That's called Let's Create, and it describes the change that we want to see. You can read the Let's Create strategy on our website for more information. And later on in the presentation, I will talk about how the strategy, how project grants relates to the strategy. And what I can do afterwards is make sure the links for the strategy are with Kate and Joe so that they're then sent out to attendees as well. Okay, so project grants and what you can apply for. Most of the projects that we fund will fall into one or more of these categories. So dance, literature, music, theatre, visual arts, museums. With museums, accredited museums only can apply for work such as exhibitions, conservation and learning and outreach, which is related to their core work. And combined arts is in the middle of this presentation here because it can mean many things. It might be a combination of the other art forms, or it might describe a festival or a carnival or other types of celebrational projects that explore new technologies in like the arts, museums and libraries. We support libraries. I don't think there's any libraries on the webinar at the moment, but we support libraries, but only to carry out this type of work, including reader development. Core library activities such as stocking books should be covered by local councils or their core government grant. Most projects will probably fall somewhere in this circle. It might not. If you're not sure, you can get in touch with us and we can let you know if it's the type of thing that we can fund. Our customer service team are great, and I'll make sure that we share details of contacting them as we go along. Okay, so there are some types of activity that you can't apply for. Work that won't reach people in England, either in the short term or the long term. So you can apply for research or to write a book as long as you can show that people will see, hear, read or experience that it's somewhere in the future. Things that have already happened or that would happen before we could make a decision, we can't fund those. We can't fund school or university courses. Students can apply, as can a researcher at a school or a university, but we can't fund anything that should be covered as part of an accredited course or curriculum. You would need to show within your application that the project is extra or separate from a course of study. We can't fund business running costs. As project grants, this fund is for standalone one-off projects that have a clear start and end date. We can't fund cinema or fashion. There are other organisations to cover those type of things, whether that be the British Film Institute or the Fashion Council. We can support artists or museums in using video as a way of reaching people, but cinema as an art form is not part of our remit. Again, if you've got a specific question about that, if that is something you could contact us to clarify with customer service. Okay. Oh, sorry, I scrolled. So the main fund, project grants. What is project grants? Project grants is our open access funding program for arts, museums and libraries projects. It's our most popular funding program by a mile, and it's made possible with funding from the National Lottery. Some of you may have known of Grants for the Arts before, and this fund replaced Grants for the Arts in early 2018. And just last month, we developed a refreshed version of project grants for 2021. The refreshed project grants continues to be a high volume, flexible programme, and to help both individuals and cultural organisations. We want to help you recover from the pandemic, as well as delivering our strategy. Before we go on into more detail about project grants, I'll just outline by what we mean by the word project. So a project has a start and an end date and things that you want to achieve within that time frame. And a project eligible for National Lottery project grants will allow people to experience or take part in artistic work, museum-focused work, or libraries-related activity, either, and as we said earlier, either as part of the project or in the longer term. Okay, what does project grants support? Excuse me. Okay, it can support quite a broad range of creative and cultural projects which benefit people living in England, a wide range of individuals and organisations, professional companies and non-professional groups to deliver creativity and cultural activity. It could range from projects directly creating and delivering creative activity to projects which have a longer term positive impact, such as organisational development, research and development, or sector support and development. It's always open. You can apply at any time. There's no deadlines. It's a rolling programme. So in short, is project grants for you? Yes, if you're a creative, cultural practitioner or organisation in England, project grants is open to you, whatever your background, size of organisation, or the stage that you're at in your career. A grant can help you and your work reach people and communities that you would like to engage. So there's a range of activities that you can apply for, including research for a new project, talking to people and finding out about places, things, or other research that will inform a piece of work you want to do in the future. In terms of research project, we would want to see how it might reach people in the longer term. You could do this by showing us your track record or confirmed partners, or who you will show and publish the research to. Making new work. This could be writing a play or a book, choreographing a show. Events, this could be a play, a concert, a performance, workshops, learning opportunities, or a workshop to pass on your skills, whether that was in dance or writing to people that might want to learn, or you might want to attend a workshop as part of a wider project to be better at what you're doing. And touring work, taking a play, workshop or gig around an area, or in some cases even the country. Okay, so let's create. I don't know whether anybody on this webinar today was at a session I did with Jane Knights in the Cultural and Creative Forum the other week, where I spoke about the Let's Create strategy. So if you were at that, some of this will feel familiar. So the Let's Create strategy is built around 3 outcomes and 4 investment principles. These are our ideas about how we will measure ourselves to make sure we achieve the aims of Let's Create. So the 3 outcomes are creative people, cultural communities, and a creative and cultural country. If you decide to apply to project grants, we will ask you to tell us how your project relates to at least one of these 3 outcomes. You could tell us if it related to 2 or 3 of them, but 1 is enough. And the 4 investment principles: inclusivity and relevance, ambition and quality, dynamism and environmental responsibility. Depending on how much you apply for, you might want to talk about more than one of the investment principles. Every project will need to think about inclusivity and relevance. So this means how your project would include the people you'd like it to, how it would be relevant to the people you'd like to work with. Your project will need to tell us who will be experiencing the project, how they'll get involved, how they'll benefit from taking part. There's more detail on each of the outcomes and the investment principles on our website, and that would be in the strategy link that I'll forward on to Kate and Joe afterwards. Okay, so with regards to project grants, we have 2 levels of funding. You can choose to apply for either £30,000 or less, or £30,000 and over. With a grant for £30,000 or less, we would usually make a decision within 8 weeks. And for between £30,000 and £100,000, we would usually make a decision in 12 weeks. There are 2 how to apply guidance documents on our website, one for each strand. So if you're looking to make an application, please make sure you read the appropriate how to apply guidance, because there are slight differences for the different elements. We do have some over £100,000 strands. They are nationally significant projects, area applications, and place partnerships. They do have permission to apply or expression of interest processes to go through, but the main fund is the up to 100,000. Okay, I'll go through the different programme strands now, which are all for £30,000 and over, and are for projects with specific aims. So touring projects, as you can see here, the touring projects could support local, national or international touring activity, and an expression of interest is needed for these. We support a variety of touring work through project grants. It could involve live performances, international work, streaming, exhibitions, workshops, residencies, showcasing, testing, or a hybrid model or a combination of those things. And we have a touring strand as well. To apply to the dedicated touring strand, your project needs to be for more than £30,000. There isn't a maximum for this fund, however, but it would need to meet our touring strand definition, which for this is the distribution of the same product, programme or event to at least 2 different locations. Your tour can include digital distribution, but the primary focus of the project must be touring work to physical places. We need a focus on work that is ready to tour. We wouldn't expect to support testing or previewing work through a large-scale touring project strand, but you could apply to main project grants for that kind of work. So national significant projects are major projects that can demonstrate a national significance. We'd expect these as having an impact on the arts and culture sector nationally, and we define that type of application as being for more than £100,000. And we review it as significantly developing one of those disciplines that we spoke about earlier as part of the creative and cultural sector in England, or an activity that we view as engaging and influencing significant numbers of people in England beyond the applicant's own geographic area. The place partnership projects. We can support a specific type of projects that can make a step change in the creative and cultural opportunity in places through project grants. These are activities that seek to transform an aspect of creative and cultural provision in line with the Let's Create strategy and the strategic cultural development aspirations of the place that the activity would benefit. The type of change that we want to see these projects make will necessitate partnership working, and we have a ring-fenced budget within project grants for place partnership projects. And we will use it strategically to make sure we're supporting activities that have significant impacts for communities across England. For these projects, we would, a place partnership project, it would be over £100,000, is a strategic place-based intervention that is intended to make a long-term difference to the cultural and/or creative life of the local community and make a clear step change in provision that in that place where a relevant partnership exists to deliver the project. We defined a place as a specific geographic area of any scale. So it could be a village, a town, a city, a local authority, for example. Where the proposed intervention will take place, and where a cultural strategy or similar exists that covers that same area. It could mean that this application might be for activity in a town or village that is covered by a cultural strategy for their district, for example. And we would expect to support applications between £101,000 up to £1 million, or potentially above, but that would be in exceptional circumstances. If you want to apply for any of these three strands on the slide, you would need to submit an expression of interest first, and we would then tell you whether we will invite you to make an application. This is because we want to be sure that these projects has potential to reach audiences and have the kind of impact we would expect before someone invests their time in making the full application. The expression of interest process can take up to 8 weeks, and then there would be the additional 12 weeks for the decision time on the full application. So if you were coming in at this stage, you would need to make sure that you were leaving enough time to complete both elements of the process. Okay. As well as those three strands that we've just touched on, we also have a formal process in place which enables us to encourage applications to specific areas of focus, and we call these time-limited priorities. These allow us to respond through project grants quickly to areas of need in the sector, but they will always be agreed by our executive board before we publish them. They would have a specific area of focus, they're detailed on our website, and information sheets are provided. So currently, for example, we have the Grassroots Music Fund, and we've asked applicants to apply specifically to this grassroots live music priority using project grants, but through the grassroots strand. But the work needs to be in the grassroots music sector or applying to engage communities with that part of the sector. If you're coming into one of the time limited priorities, you still apply through the main project grants programme, but there will be a drop down menu within that to say if you're applying to one of the priorities. But the process through Grantium, the 6 and 12 week rules and the under and over 30, that all still applies. Okay. Move on to the application form now. So the project grant, and this current round particularly, is closely aligned to Let's Create. So the new revised application form is set out into 4 sections which relate to our strategy, and you will need to respond to that. We've included text from the How to Apply guidance within the process to give you more detail about the sections. So essential information isn't an application criteria. This is just where we get that basic information we need. So it's basic details about you and your project. Feasibility and risk is then helps us understand how you will successfully deliver your project. We need to know here about your plans for managing the project, what your budget is, how you'll respond to any risks or challenges. You don't need to have managed a project before, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you've given consideration to how you will manage this project, the budget, any risks or challenges there might be, and that you and your project partners have the skills to ensure the project is delivered successfully. Outcomes, so this is how your project aligns to at least one of the outcomes to help deliver the strategy. As I said earlier, it doesn't have to address all 3, it does just have to address one. But we do want you to set in detail how particular components are being addressed and how the project will help deliver our strategy. Likewise, the investment principles. In this section, you can use the investment principles to build up a picture of the project, and it will help us understand your intentions and plans and how the project will contribute to delivering our strategy. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you only have to deliver against one of the investment principles. If it's relevant to deliver against more, please tell us that. Additionally, we've created an offline version of the application form, which will be available on our website. So it will enable you to see how the form looks and prepare for the questions before getting started on Grantium. So if you want to put in an application but you need to register for Grantium, you can, whilst waiting for your granting profile to be approved, you can start working on an offline form or considering the application. Okay, so feasibility and risk. Excuse me. So to recap the three criteria, which are feasibility and risk, your project and the outcomes, and then your project and the investment principles. Feasibility and risk is how you will deliver your project. The outcomes that you need to respond to at least one of. I'm aware I'm repeating myself, sorry. But the outcomes and the investment principles are what we're working towards. You will need to respond to at least one of creative people, cultural communities, or creative and cultural country. And then the investment principles. All the projects must respond to inclusivity and relevance, as mentioned earlier. Over projects that are for touring over 30,000 must also respond to environmental responsibility. If you're applying for over 100,000, you must respond to all four of the investment principles. Okay, a bit of detail now on feasibility and risk. As I said earlier, the feasibility and risk section helps us understand more about your plans and how you intend to deliver the project. And when we look at your answers to questions in this section, we'll think about whether the budget is appropriate for your activity, if your income and expenditure is appropriate, are all the items in your budget relevant and reasonable? And that includes wages or any quotes you might have obtained for equipment you'd like to purchase with your grant. Whether the activity is attracting income from any other sources. Is that income confirmed? And if it's not, are the income sources realistic? We'll also be looking at if you have appropriate financial controls in place. Do you or the people you're working with have the necessary skills to manage the budget, for example? If the activity is really realistic, well planned, and if you've demonstrated that you are able to deliver the project with the skills that you have, or whether you're using partners with those skills to help you grow your skills to deliver the project, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to have all the skills yourself. You can bring partners and other organisations in to help you deliver a project. I hope that's clear. Okay, the outcomes. So as we've said before, you must deliver against at least one of these outcomes. And we've gone into a little more depth of detail here on each of the three outcomes. So you should pick the outcome that your project most closely aligns to, and then we'll expect you to tell us about it in more detail. So creative people, the idea here is that everyone can develop and express creativity throughout their life. Everyone can be creative, and each of us has the potential to develop further. Taking part in creative acts such as singing, photography, or writing can help us think, experiment, and better understand the world. The public has told us how much they value opportunities to take part in creative activities, and they want us to see us do more to widen and improve these opportunities. Cultural communities is the idea that villages, towns, and cities thrive through a collaborative approach to culture. Culture and the experience it offers can have a deep and lasting effect on places and the people who live in them. Investment in cultural activities and in creative and cultural practitioners, arts organisations, museums and libraries, etc., helps improve the lives of people living in a neighbourhood, regenerate neighbourhoods, support local economies, attract visitors and bring people together. This can only work if there's a shared commitment to removing some of those barriers that currently prevent people from taking part in publicly funded activity. And a creative and cultural country is the idea that England's cultural sector is innovative, collaborative, and international. We know that the cultural sector will only ever be as strong as the talent on which it's built, and its future success depends on being able to draw on a talent pool that reflects society as a whole and is watched wider and deeper than now. To achieve the first two outcomes, we need a professional cultural sector that generates new ideas, works easily and effectively with others, and is adept at developing talent from every community. We believe it should aspire to be world leading in the way it makes art, in the imagination and expertise with which it makes exciting use of collections and develops libraries, and in the culture it creates and shares. You should set out in detail in your application how you're addressing the components and how your project is helping to deliver the strategy, and it's 1,500 words for each outcome. So we spoke about in the feasibility section about how we look at whether you have any partnership funding. So let's just touch on that. Some match funding, sometimes called partnership funding, it's the amount of money for your project which is coming from other sources other than the amount that you're applying to for us at Arts Council. As well as cash match funding, it could also be in the form of supporting kind. And historically, for project grants, we've asked applicants to make sure that at least 10% of the project was funded from other sources, and to tell us that in their application form. However, for this version of project grants now, we've made a change to be more flexible about this as we come out of the pandemic. So we don't require a 10% match funding now, but we ask for it to be there where possible. Because project grants funding comes from the National Lottery, we do need to ask for match funding where it's reasonable. However, we're trying to be flexible because we know that the pandemic has made it harder for applicants to attract match funding, but we also know that there are historical inequalities with match funding, where it's more difficult for certain applicants to access funding in certain areas. So we want to remove the barrier where there is one and have the programme as fair and equitable as possible. So if you aren't able to find match funding, it doesn't prohibit you from applying, but we will ask you to tell us why you've been unable to provide match funding in your application form, and your efforts to find match funding and why it's been unsuccessful. So I think, in short, it's match funding if you can, but if you can't, please tell us how you tried and any circumstances within your application. But yeah, as I said, it could be cash, it could be supporting kind. So if you think, oh, I don't have any match funding, but I'm using the local church hall for free, if you know that the church hall would normally be hired out at £10 an hour and you're using it for 5 hours, for example, that is £50. That is the equivalent of £50 supporting kind. So Grantium, if you've applied to us before, you potentially have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Grantium. All our applications are made online using Grantium. On this system, you can start and complete your application, you receive decisions, accept offer of a grant, request payments, submit payment conditions, activity report forms, and receive all email notifications from us. If you'd like to apply to us, step one is that you need to create a user account. You need to create a login and tell us your name. It needs to be your individual legal name, because if you're successful, this is your sort of digital signature on the funding agreement. You then, step two is to create an applicant profile, and this will be where you say whether you're an individual for an organisation, for example. You only need to do these steps once. If you already have an account on Grantium and you want to reapply, you don't need a new account. You can reuse the one you've got. And if it's that you've forgotten your login details, you can, you can re-find them. Okay, step three, you then have to sit tight a little bit whilst we validate your account. So as I said, you only need one account. So we need to make sure that you're you. So we validate your profile. And we also want to make sure that there's only one of you on the system. So if potentially you made an account a couple of years ago and you've forgotten about it, the validation system may find that system, for example. We need up to 5 working days, so a week, to validate your application. But whilst you're waiting, you could read the how to apply guidance and information sheets, and you can look at the offline application form, as I'd said. Steps 4 and 5 are the eligibility questionnaire and starting your application. When you start your application, it opens with a short eligibility quiz to check that you're applying for the right kind of activity before you go through to complete the application form. And then whilst you're completing your application, the form will check your applications. So it will check that your budget is balanced, for example, and that you've answered every question. So if your budget doesn't balance, it won't let you submit. There's lots of support for using Grantium on our website, including videos and guidance documents. If you're stuck, call our customer service team or use the get in touch button on the website that I mentioned earlier. They are the real Grantium experts. They use that system all day long. A relationship manager such as myself can give development advice, but we don't know how the side of Grantium works that you're looking at. Customer service really are the best people, and they are quick at giving that feedback for Grantium. Okay, Project Grants has just one stage that you need to complete, and that's the application form. There's no second rounds or opportunities for you to give us more information. Your application form should tell us everything we need to know to make a decision about your project. So this graphic here shows you the journey that your application will go on as it goes through our organisation to reach a decision. If you're applying for over 30,000, your application will go through an extra step in our process to allow us to look at your application in more detail and write an appraisal. The prompts that we use to write our appraisals are published in the guidance and in the application form in Grantium, so you know exactly what we're going to consider when we read your application. So please do address the prompts when making your application. This enables us to make quick decisions and respond to the large volume of applications that we receive. So if we go through the process now from left to right, starting with the eligibility check. This is where we check if the project could be funded, could the activity be funded through project grants, and is the project application form complete. Approximately 33% of applications we make ineligible are underdeveloped, so not enough information to make a decision. So please do read the guidance, as I've said, and be as clear and comprehensive as possible in your answers. As I said, the prompts are listed within the guidance, and they're the prompts we use to make our decision, so address them and how your project meets them. After the eligibility check, we move on to a risk check. The information that you've given us about how you'll manage your project finances, budgets, and how you'll manage the delivery of the project will be reviewed to check that the activity is feasible. Eligibility and risk checks are part of the investment centre review, carried out by an impartial centralised team in Manchester with art form and project management expertise. After your project has passed both those, we move on to appraisal against criteria. So the appraisal against criteria is an additional step for the over £30,000 grants only. So a relationship manager such as myself will review the application against the 3 criteria. So that's the feasibility and risk, the outcomes, and the investment principles. We take a more forensic approach to the over £30,000 applications as they're a greater financial risk to public money. After the appraisal, we move on to decision meetings. So if your application is for under £30,000, it comes from the risk check direct with 30,000 and under decision meeting. This goes to a decision meeting where it's reviewed by 2 relationship managers from the applicant's home area. Using the available budget, the decision meeting will fund a range of applications across different types of applicant disciplines and geographic areas. If it's an over £30,000 application, post-appraisal, it will move to an over £30,000 decision meeting, where appraisals are reviewed at a decision meeting made up of senior staff from the applicant's home area. And again, using the available budget, the decision meeting will fund a range of applications across the different types of applications, disciplines, and geographic areas. So following the decision meeting, a decision letter is generated, and Grantian will notify applicants by email once a decision has been made. Applicants can then log on to the system to view their letter. If you're unsuccessful and you wish to reapply, you're welcome to do so. But if we've identified any weaknesses, you must think about the reasons your application was unsuccessful and address any weaknesses identified in your feedback in the reapplication. All applications for over £30,000 receive their full written appraisal via Grantium as well. And if we've identified any particular areas for development, it will also include development statements that you can take on board if you decide to apply. If you're successful, your decision letter will make you a grant offer through Grantium and will then follow steps of how to claim your grant. So advice on project grants. Following today, the project grants pages on our website should be the first point of advice for most people. I can't reiterate enough how the step-by-step guidance on how to apply should be read. I would always say the first thing is to read it and then read it again. This explains the aims of the programme, what kind of activity we can support, as well as guidance on how to complete your application form. And then there's information sheets on there as well that can provide further help with planning the project and more advice on certain types of activities such as touring, like I touched on, or specific strands such as the grassroots music. Our customer services team are the first point of call really then for project grant advice. They can advise on the eligibility of activity, discuss any parts of the application you're unsure of and help with the form. They're also the people to contact if you have queries about the access support or the guidance in other formats such as BSL, Braille or easy reading audio. Sometimes they may pass your query on to a relationship manager based on one of the areas, and they may come back to you directly, or they may arrange for someone such as myself to speak with you directly. And then relationship managers. We get over 10,000 applications to project grants every year, so it's impossible for relationship managers to speak to every applicant. As you may or may not be aware, we work across large geographic areas, and so we have a very short period of time each month to provide advice on project grants. It's roughly 3 days a month for a full-time member of staff. So we're not at the face, we're not super easily accessible all the time. So customer service really are, I've done it again. Customer service really are the first point of call, because they can often help with those initial queries that can help you move on quicker than maybe waiting for a relationship manager. But if they can't help, they will put you in touch with one of us. Okay, and this slide here, having said I wouldn't do a slide with lots of text, I have popped this one in. I just wanted to pop this table in because Project Grants is one of our 2 main programs that can support individuals, and the other is developing your creative practice. And developing your creative practice supports people to carry out a focused program of development work that doesn't necessarily involve any direct public engagement. But you can't apply to both programs at the same time. So if you've applied to one, you need to wait until you've received a decision on the other before you can apply. So you need to think about which program you want to apply to. And the main thing to think about when you're doing that is, will your project include opportunities for people to become involved with or experience work, or is it mainly focused on developing your own practice? So this checklist here, which is available on our website, but again, the slides can be made available to you afterwards, can help you see which fund may be right for you. So project grants is open to individuals and organisations, for example, where developing your creative practice is only for individuals. The developing your creative practice is for an individual to carry out a period of focused work or make a change. The main beneficiary is that individual, and grants for between £2,000 and £10,000. The project grants are people engaging with the project, and the projects can be up to 3 years in length. Could be reaching new audiences, could be new work, could be something totally different or a tour, and it's a grant of up to £100,000. So maybe just use the checklist, depending on what it is you're looking at. Think about looking at the checklist first. If the main beneficiary is you as an individual and it's about developing you, it may be worth looking at the developing your creative practice guidance first. That has just closed, so the next round, there's normally 4 a year, so the next deadline for DYCP won't be until next year, though. I will say that now. And that's me done. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see the chat.
So we haven't got any questions in the Q&A just yet, but if anyone would like to submit anything, then you're obviously very welcome to. We've got a hand up. Bear with me 1 second, and we've got Miriam King.
I started in the last couple of days a project, which is, I've been working as an artist since 1957, and there are a lot of sketches I have done during the whole time. I've been all over the place, which have never ever been seen. And I wondered, and it is just a sort of like a query really, initially, would it be possible to be funded to make these unpublished or I've never shown them anywhere because they've only been in drawing form, but to create from the drawing forms throughout my artistic life into an exhibition. It'd be quite a large exhibition, and it ranges from London to Essex to Qatar, America, etc. And I think it would be of interest. But of course, I work very fast anyway, usually, and I've already done the drawings. So all I need to do is to create them into something visually that other people can see and understand, and hopefully appreciate, and hopefully eventually buy. But they need to be framed. I'm a pensioner. Although I have always funded myself, is it possible to get a grant for such a thing? It would be quite a large exhibition for framing, etc., etc. I don't know whether it's feasible for, unless it's an individual who's awfully rich, to be able to even contemplate it. So I'm just putting it forward, actually, and wondered whether it is something that could be considered.
Okay, so yes, visual arts exhibitions are eligible for project grant funding. You would need to be able to demonstrate how such an exhibition met the outcomes and investment principles, and then that would go through the appraisal process that we touched on. But I know that Kate and Joe will send a copy of the presentation or links to the website and things afterwards, where you'll be able to find the guidance to read it in more detail. But in short, yes, exhibitions are something that is eligible for project grant funding.
And I don't mind. It would be quite nice, actually, not only because I'm in Lowestoft, but to take it around to because it's a varied exhibition. It's mostly people, because I love people. But I do buildings and things like that. But it's generally, I've looked through all of my work, and mostly it's people. I love characters. I love people, and very often it's people who get overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely, Miriam. I know your work really well, and we love it very much. Ali Tipping, who some of you might know, who works with the HAS area, has suggested perhaps that we could look at doing a collective exhibition with various artists from the area, which might help to fulfill the criteria a little bit more. But that's something that we can perhaps build on and have a think about, Miriam. So we'll get in contact with you. We'll send you a link to this presentation so that you can watch it again, and perhaps have a chat with you and a few other people to see if there's something that we can pull together. I think Kate told me that Fiona Shreever's got a hand up. Fiona, have you got something you wanted to ask?
Yeah.
I didn't actually mean to press the button, but I'm quite interested in what you're saying about the collective arts exhibition. Obviously, as being a member of Easterly Arts, artists, and also, you know, because recently I had a cultural grant so that I can carry on with my work. So could you explain who that was and how it relates?
What was the grant, sorry, Fiona? Was it a cultural recovery fund or emergency response fund, one of those?
Yes, it was through the council.
Which council?
It was Suffolk. Yeah, Suffolk. Sorry, Lisa. It was, I'll give you a bit of background. It was Suffolk County Council and the SIGIF fund that we had. We gave a small grant of £1,000 to various creatives across Lowestoft specifically, and Fiona was a beneficiary of that because she needed a new spray booth basically to be able to carry on doing her ceramics. And there is, so Easterly is a group of artists that are working within, I think it's within 20 miles of Lowestoft, and they're producing some really fantastic work. So it might be there's an argument that we could do a funding application for a group exhibition, perhaps, that's very much about place. But that's something that we can maybe discuss with you at a later date.
Yeah, definitely. If the organisation aren't an accredited organisation, obviously an individual artist could potentially apply on behalf of the collective in that experience. But yeah, with regards to that particular grant from the council, we weren't involved with that at Arts Council at all.
No. Okay, I think that's something that's really interesting because we could help all of the individual artists under the Easterly banner, which would be quite beneficial, I think. So let's have a think about that.
I can see a couple of people put their hands up, but someone sent me a question directly, I think, as well. So just while you try and unmute one of those guys, I don't know who's asked the question. It just says, as a limited company, we've been told that it's difficult to get grant funding. Can we still apply for a project grant? The project grant, organisations can apply. It doesn't prevent you from applying for a project grant, but the activity can't be for profit. So if you're a limited company for profit, the activity that you're applying for cannot be for profit. Hopefully that answers the question for whoever it was.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, Tim.
Hi. Yeah, it's really sort of following on from the last question was about a limited company and obviously making a profit from this. I'm a sole trader. I mean, it's not really going to be huge. I mean, it will be making money for myself and the business, I suppose. Is that still, you know, with the grant, would I be able to apply for grant for wages for this as well for my project? Because it did say there was no business running costs. You can't apply for business running costs, but the project would be part of the business. So would that allow me to apply for that? Or
So the project, in terms of a project grant, the budget has to break even. So if you apply for £5,000, for example, you need to spend £5,000. And that, so you can cover, if you've got staff working on the project, you can cover those costs.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What you can't do is apply for £5,000, only spend 4.5 or 4 for say, but keep the 5, if that makes sense, or generate a large profit as a result of the grant. Yeah. So if you were putting on performance and you were selling tickets, we would expect the income from those tickets to be included in that project budget. Does that make sense?
It does, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
it does.
Thanks, Tim. I haven't got any questions or hands raised at the moment, but I think, Joe, you might have had a question.
Sorry, my dogs are here in the background and they're being very noisy, so I'll read out Hugh's question. Is there a benefit in assembling a team for a project grant? And would there be a benefit in being constituted, or is this just not important?
So in terms of assembling a team, if you were applying as an individual, if I've interpreted your question right, Hugh, you may have some partners or other organisations that work with you that you may want to name in the application as supporting it. Just give me a thumbs up or something in the chat if I've got it right. In terms of being constituted, we can't fund. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to fund a group, say, a collective that weren't legally funded, because you wouldn't have a structure or bank account to be able to pay that money into. So we need to have like a legal signatory and someone legal to pay the money to. I feel like I'm tripping over myself, but does that make sense, or am I talking around in circles? A bit cotton woolly.
It made sense to me. I think I know one particular project that I think Hugh might be able to do something quite good with. And I think what you mean, Hugh, is that you would make the application, but if you can say that you're working with other organisations that will also benefit from that, it will strengthen that application, but it's not therefore a joint application. It is just Hugh that will be making the application for that particular project.
Yeah.
I hope that's what I was interpreting Hugh to say. So.
Hugh's agreed.
I guess.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the feasibility and the risk and the who might support the project and who may be there to support the delivery of it, having the right partners and making sure that they're all listed on the application form. It really does, it shows where the strength of the partnership and the areas of expertise are coming from.
Okay, brilliant. Have we got anybody else who wants to ask anything?
Not that I can see at the moment.
No, I think we're about there. Are we ready to wrap up then, guys, do you think?
I think so.
And let poor Lisa off the hook because you've done so well. I'm really glad we didn't drag you over to Lowestoft because it would have been quite grim for you, I think. But thank you. We really, really appreciate you coming along today when you're feeling 100%. So
I'll send over the links and bits and pieces to the guidance. I think you did post one of the links in the webpage, didn't you? But there's also a couple of really good videos on our YouTube, like little short videos around introduction to the strategy and things that we can share with you.
It's a really handy quiz as well, which helps you to work out what stage you're at and if you're ready or not, which I thought was a really useful thing as well. So we'll put links for all of that, and we'll just tidy this up a little bit and put it on the East Suffolk Council's YouTube channel so that you can view this multiple times. And hopefully, Lisa, if you're feeling better in the new year, perhaps you can come over and do another session with us. So
yeah, we can try that, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Really, but yeah.
All right, brilliant stuff.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.